I'm here sitting next to Meghan Stark, a web developer, Moto enthusiast, poet, entrepreneur, among many other things. Right? Does that?
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty good.
So what's up?
Oh, nothing much. Beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Of course. Yeah, it was a beautiful day today.
Yeah.
So you are a Milwaukee native, right?
Well, it depends on how far back you want to go. It was funny, when I was at UW-Madison, I kind of developed a reputation of being from Milwaukee and gunning so hard for Milwaukee, which I do, but I was technically born in Arizona. I was born in Mesa, which is like the third largest city in Arizona. It's in the metropolitan Phoenix area, but my parents moved to Wisconsin when I was like 2.5 or so, I think, so close enough, but technically not a Wisconsinite by birth. Sure.
I've met a couple people from Arizona. Have you ever made trips back to the motherland?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There is something like this homeland element to being in Arizona, and I really love it and I miss it. I haven't been back for a couple years now, not since college, but I'm always meaning to go back.
Yeah, I know it's lots of deserts, right?
Yeah, the Sonoran Desert covers a lot of it, and it's a beautiful terrain. I've been to New Mexico recently, but that's more of like the high desert, so there's all sorts of different kinds of deserts, and even California has its own kind of desert.
What does high desert mean?
I think it depends on like the kinds of plants, like there are arid plants there.
Oh, like High German versus like folk German?
Yeah.
Or is it like...
Everything's got degrees.
Or it's high in terms of topography, is it higher above the sea level?
I think it's high in terms of the sea level, because I know New Mexico has like the Sandia Mountains, and I think they're slightly more mountainous desert, and so they get slightly different fauna.
Yeah.
Fauna.
Flora is flowers, right?
Yeah.
That's
gut
what I always
bacteria,
think.
gut flora.
And fauna is little creatures, right?
Yeah, fauna can be, I think, plant life and animal life.
Like a fawn. Or is that a different word? Like fawn, like a
any etymologist?
Baby deer.
No, those are bugs. But who studies words? Is it etymology?
Etymologist.
Okay, cool.
Entomologist.
Yeah. I don't know anything.
See, you're
about
not
words.
an etymologist. Obviously.
I'm not even a poet.
There's an N. Could you see there's a difference?
Yeah.
A difference. But yeah, you said you are a poet. So wait, poetry.
You said I was a poet.
I said I was.
No, I agree. You're a poet too.
No, you're a poet.
That's Spider-Man meme.
Oh yeah, that just happened. When two poets start poking at each other.
Yeah, poeting.
But okay, so I get this a lot. You mentioned I'm a poet. Yeah, that's true. And also, what's interesting, I don't get to meet too many creative and kind of systematic rather, like mathematical minded. You
Yeah.
kind of digest both the analytics and the creativity and stuff. And a lot of people get really confused by that when they hear that I'm interested in both the things, and they always think that they're in the antithesis of each other, and that they like butt heads a lot. So what do you think? Do you have that similar generalization, or when people talk to you, or?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like people pair, like musicians and math pair wonderfully together. I know a ton of, especially people who are more interested in like classical music, I find they tend to be a little bit more mathematical. And with myself, it's tough because I always thought like I'm not mathematically minded because I didn't excel at certain kinds of math, but like the types of math I do are more like algebraic. The maths I do. Right. That's what the Brits say.
The maths I do.
More
that your
like
memoir?
Yeah, the maths I do. The maths I don't do. And I really do like data and analytics, but I don't like, I thought that I wasn't mathematically minded because I don't like like logical loops or really complex equations or like the scientific method. I mean, I like logic. Things making sense. But I was having to do that today, and I was just like, oh god, my brain. I can work through it. Simple like looping that you do with like front end development isn't the craziest thing to me, but when it's like updating arrays and like doing this and doing that, I'm very like algebra thinking. Like I'm just balancing the equation, nothing crazy is happening. That's
just a bunch of algebraic equations together in a function.
Okay, so I'm a tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
Just enough, but
no, like you were saying, were you about to say for loop earlier, or no?
Yeah, I was about to say for loop.
Yeah, see, I love that stuff. The data, like taking all this data and being like, what is this thing? Just like, what's in there, and how are all
output yourself.
And then I loop through them all, and then I look, and then I loop through them again, even though you're not supposed to, and then look through them again, but. So so you're saying that...
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's critiqued although I suppose it's funny because even though I am making like more and more online content, the thing that people most often like grapple with me, I think no one ever at the same time sees the full picture of what I do. And I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap, but I have a hard time because I sound like a maniac when I tell people about all the things I do. It's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I have my company, I'm a graphic designer. I also do web development, and I'm a poet. And so I'll usually forget something. So I think people never get like a full sampling of the array of stuff I do because things just come up as they come up.
Right.
So I don't think I've gotten, not for a while, people critiquing per se, like, oh, I wouldn't expect you to be like this kind of smart and also creative, because I think, well, I hang out with a lot of people who already know me. And then when it comes to online, I think like it becomes really evident really fast. I don't know, the way I talk, the way I operate, and the way I share things, like even with social media, like those motorcycle self-portraits, you can tell that I've got like a background in some sort of like art or photography. At least I think you can tell, because like there's attention paid to like composition and the coloring and like all sorts of different stuff. So there aren't any accents. So sometimes it would be nice to just kind of like have a casual social media experience and just like post whatever. But yeah, I don't think, if anything, the things that people can't conflate most often is that like you're a female and you do this stuff.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, pretty often that's like...
It can only be a jack of all trades.
Yeah. No Janes of all trades.
No Janes. Meghan's of all trades.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll make new ones.
Yeah, that's...
Janet's.
So that's one thing that I noticed when I first became aware of all the workings that you were doing here in Milwaukee, was that cohesion between multiple facets. It wasn't just one simple thing that was there. No, it's that simple. I feel that. You got to wear many hats. But what's crazy to me is how it seems like you're able to do it maybe better than I feel like I can. But like showing, or at least bringing them all together, like, and
yeah, they're
expressing
slowly
them.
merging.
Yeah.
I think it's a funny thing. Well, I think that's where my like design and language skills come in the most, is not just in like creating the thing, but making systems and organizing things, which sometimes can drive people crazy. But to me,
Systems.
it's like, it's so handy.
I'm a systems man.
But then not to get too attached to those systems, because that's where you can get manic and you're like, whoa, I created these rules that are arbitrary. Like even when I just mentioned my view on social media, it's like I could just post a cat photo next. I don't even have a cat, but I could just go rogue. And I have gone somewhat rogue before. And people tend to like that when you upset the thing. But you kind of have to have your system first to subvert it.
You got to know how it works in order to break it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what currently are you finding to be one of your most enjoyable facets of all these things? If you have all these labels of what you're able to accomplish, or what you can do industriously. Yeah,
it's interesting because I have all these different like spheres that I can operate in. A lot of people, they say, like, don't kind of just follow your whims. They say to just kind of, like, be rigorous and be systematic about stuff and, like, focus on one thing at a time. And I think because in terms of, like, the work I do, I can get really focused and intense. And I just kind of have to, like, block out those periods of time to commit to certain things. So it's like, oh, I can feel, like, when I'm in, like, a poetry mood, I'm like, just run with that and don't let that go. So I've been writing a lot more lately. So that's been awesome. And I actually just submitted to 2 more poetry contests / publication opportunities today. And I did a full manuscript submission just yesterday or the day before. So I was in editing mode while I was in writing mode.
What were we talking here?
So poetry manuscript.
Hop on pop, or five words. Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, are we doing? I was like, are you my mother? And I was like, that might not even be Dr. Seuss.
No. Oh, that's some
deep cuts.
That's some Freudian poetry.
Oh yeah. No, it's So yeah, I would love to talk about, because I've been writing for years, and I haven't really, even like in the past couple years, I haven't really mentioned it that much. I'll post about online the things that are already published, but that's so few things that it's easy to get like lost in the sauce. And it's kind of one of those deals where things don't get published until you're submitting them. So I was submitting really heavily in 2017, and I got published in 2017, and I laid off it in 2018. And nothing got published since 2018. So I'm back on that kind of schedule of publication stuff. But yeah, so I've been working on a manuscript for a long time, and it's had different iterations and even like kind of different themes, or it kind of like worked itself out to some extent. Like the more I wrote, the more I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. And that's the kind of category things, and coming from like a bit of an editorial background. But I've got like 50 plus pages of poetry, and a lot of it's lyrical, some of it's free verse, some of it has meter. I think even when I'm writing kind of free verse, it ends up being metric in some way, because I really like rhythm, and I like a lot of wordplay, and some of it's subtle, some of it's obvious. But not too like corny punny. More so, sure. I like a sophisticated pun.
Yeah, who would ever use puns?
Yeah, in prestigious literature.
Yeah. High works of art.
Yeah,
just ruin it with a pun.
In any kind of anthology of serious work that you want to distribute.
One pun is probably too much.
Perhaps even an album of puns.
Let alone a discography.
A discography of puns.
No, I'm a big fan of puns and wordplay as well. I love that stuff, and it's nice to. I don't know. I've written poems on a lot of my songs. I consider like have poetic elements, but even though they're written to music, it's cool. I've considered that when I was in high school. In grade school, really, before I started really recording music, I would write a lot of poetry, and that was like kind of my first. Well, it wasn't the first. I guess I was always making noises, but documented works of poetry or art that I was doing. I definitely had poems before I had good recorded songs.
When did you first start doing that?
The poetry?
Yeah, just writing anything, like with a creative.
I don't know, 2000 and 2000. Well, like.
No, earlier than that?
10. I don't know. I feel like I had to have.
Yeah, I bet your parents could find something.
Maybe like some creative writing projects. Well, yeah, no. And actually, in like third grade, we had some like creative writing projects. So I remember writing. I was able to write just freaking just make up stories. I was so good at it when I was a kid, but it probably didn't make too much sense, but it was very, very like
inspired.
Yeah, it was very inspired, exactly. And as the years go by, it's harder to tap in more and more to that, like that, like
there's a self-consciousness that comes through.
And recently I've been like trying to like go back and undo some of that stuff, but it's a lot harder than I originally thought. I was like, oh well, if I just get in the mindset, it's like I'm gonna have to like change my approach and my technique and have to but to go backwards, it just seems counterintuitive. I
feel like that's why people like alcohol sometimes, because it taps into this like childlike sentiment. So it's like, oh, a glass of wine, suddenly like I don't care so much about this stuff.
That's a good point.
And it's like did Hemingway say write drunk, edit sober? There's kind of something to that. Yeah. Not that you want to like rely on that every time, because that sounds like a quick way to develop a habit, but any sort of way you can kind of give yourself a different sensory experience.
Right, something new. It feels fresh. Feel like a kid again.
That's why a lot of writers will like get a hotel room, even in their own city, just to have a different writing space. Or I love to travel. I tend to write. I write on airplanes and write. I
like writing on airplanes because it's like, what else is there to do?
Mm-hmm. And if all that weird ambient noise.
Yeah, and I feel like if I'm watching. I mean, if it's a really long flight, I'll watch a movie, here and there. But
gotta kill some time.
I can't write for 5 hours straight on an airplane. It sounds terrible. It's those tiny little. If I was bougie in the airplane, I'm sure I'd be able to do whatever. Be able to do my work, no problem. Take a nap, that'd be great. But when you have economy standard,
I feel think even best case scenario, like even like private jet kind of stuff, which sounds incredibly wasteful, but even private jet experience, like you're still like your nostrils hurt and you could get a headache and
you're still flying. It's so loud and you're flying so high.
It's still not ideal.
Yeah, one of these days we'll get that Hyperloop and we'll just be able to.
I get kind of scared about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Technology's going.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always some good skepticism, but I mean, someone being more technologically savvy, I'm sure that there's some, there's a little less natural Luddite in you.
Yeah, sometimes. Well, I feel like when you're really
new language, this programming language.
Yeah, sometimes I can be curmudgeonly, but I think I am like pretty receptive to
all these kids nowadays with their Instagram.
I feel that way about web development actually, where a lot of people, or at least like programming people who maybe learned around the same time as I did, and they learned to like hard code and hand code everything, and maybe they like, because I didn't even have like Dreamweaver or anything when I first started. I would just have little like notepad entries that I would save as .html.
That's the right way to do it.
The old school way. And I didn't even like link them up to style sheets until, it was just like, you're just messing around. And
inline styles.
Yeah, I was like 9. Well, I didn't do inline styling. That's bad. But I put the style sheet up at the top.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I know that.
Yeah,
I've been told that by many people.
It depends. Because sometimes you're like, I can't be bothered to like make a class
or
out
do
of this.
exclamation mark important over thing. I always love doing that.
Oh, I use important very sparingly.
Yeah,
seriously.
That's because usually I'm modifying frameworks that already exist and stuff. So,
that's the thing.
So it's like if I either have to dive into this and like I'm working with a WordPress team right now that has it's got an expansive style sheet of all this stuff, and I know it's there, and I'm like, okay, I want to center something. I guess that's the easy one. I can search for the text align center, and I can look and I can find, there's this align center class they already have defined, but there's no. I'd have to scroll one by one and like know what all the classes are, and there hasn't been at least I haven't found, unless anyone knows Ocean WP's documentation for. But it's all there, and I don't want to mess with their styles. Like you should,
because you're like, I could break something else way more.
It's better to just know it right ahead of time, like study it, know what the style sheets are, use the framework as it is. But for me, I've always been kind of the like, just dive into it and just hack it, and if it works, it works. And
you can only mess it up. So
it's not messing with performance, right? Is it? I mean, it can be cause for conflicts, right? Or does it?
I think if you have
important?
like
why is that bad?
A lot of sometimes it apparently like affects the loading speed if you have like a bunch of, or do you like, I get a lot of notifications that I should be minifying style sheets and stuff.
Right.
But, like,
well, I understand
can't
that.
Be bothered.
If it's not big enough, or if you're having issues loading your site, you should minify your stuff, especially like, and a lot of things in WordPress. I know that if you add it to and queue it as a style, there's minified on the fly caching and minifying plugins.
Oh, nice.
That will take your whole, but you got to make sure it's good, because if you have all these random like style sheets that take different, conflict with each other and stuff, and then you try to minify it, the whole thing can break.
I miss static websites. Life was so simple when I never talked to databases at all. But
databases aren't so bad.
They're very, very useful.
But talking to them can be. I don't know. I did some database administration. Very small amount of SQL, like basic MySQL, and then some Microsoft SQL stuff. Okay. But I know a little bit of CSS. Like today, I was finalizing this breadcrumb stuff with this new site for Cullah that I'm making, and I read somewhere online, I think something must have broken, and I just can't find where to fix it. And the simplest solution was and I looked, and it wasn't overwriting anything, so I felt like okay doing it. But I made 2 new classes that both I just declared them as inline, and because all of the breadcrumbs were like going under, and so I was like, we'll make these items inline.
Did it break your menus? Oh no, it did the opposite.
Well, I'm pretty sure it didn't break my menus. No, because it was just for those. Just for
those classes.
I'm pretty sure. So, unless there's other things lying around, but something like that where like I don't know. I know I haven't had the best practice for things like organizing the assets correctly. And
yeah, that's like why I never wanted to do tutorials, because I'm like, oh, it's not perfect and I'm going to get roasted.
Yeah, right.
Like sometimes even just like, but it's to be like perfect about it all, especially if you're the only one touching the code, you're like, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't need to perfectly indent everything.
I don't need to comment everything. But that's the thing is,
when you do, it's so righteous to look at. Like when you encounter a file and you're like, oh my God, in college, what was I using? I think in Foundation, or I found some sort of style sheet, and they like made a table of contents. And ever since there, I was like, oh my God, I love this. Like if I ever start something from scratch.
That's what this WordPress theme does too. They have a little so I can like go in but you still, sometimes I don't know where to find them. And even with it helps. I got some right out of college. I got this, what was it written in? Node.js. It was all JavaScript, and then a theme, like some theming language it was all an MVC framework, and I was given all this code, and I had no idea how to use Node.js, but it was so well commented. Yeah, and it was just amazing. I learned it in so much faster. If I had to dive through that thing and like figure out where everything was going and what functions did and why well commented, boom, it was like, oh, that goes there, oh, that does that, and then all of a sudden I knew all the fundamentals so much faster because everything was just well documented. So and I get it, free plugins, like, maybe you got to pay to get the good documentation, the good support and stuff, and if you get enough where you can dive in and mess around.
And it's a certain kind of like puzzle problem solving, and so long as it's not so hard. I've been dealing with that lately, is this kind of cruising that line between like feeling knowledgeable enough and like knowing what you're doing and being confident in that, and then also being challenged enough, like that little balance between like chaos and order, and the kind of that gets you into that flow state, or at least like, I don't know, focused and excited. I think I've been like pushing myself a lot to the overly challenged thing, and I think that's often why I can be like saved by my other mediums. Sure,
like grounds you.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, at least I freaking know how to write a poem, maybe.
So you can be like, burning the candle a bit hard to know that around the bend you're gonna be like in a refuge, like away from. Something that you feel more comfortable with. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, oh, I can, because when I try to like fully unwind the way like other people do, I end up feeling like I wasted my time, or I'll find something new to work on somehow. I think I have to be fully away from the computer to unwind properly. Sure. And so, I'll end up like, taking a break from the mind bending thing to do something that's a little bit more like in my element, and it's almost like, the art versus craft. Sometimes things can be really challenging, but then sometimes things are formulaic, and you're like, okay, I know how to do this. Like, and even within the crafts, like that happens a lot for me with web development. I'm like, oh, this like filtering system I'm trying to develop, like I don't really know what I'm doing, but at least I know like I can style the detail layouts. Like, okay, I know how to style a page like with CSS. That's easy for me. So it's like those little wins to keep you.
Filters are kind of complicated things to wrap your head around, and because
you got to make sure the data structure is right to support that. That's what I'm finding right now. I'm like, oh, I hope that this is like I'm even organizing this right.
Or you have to just at least know all the test cases to like count for, like be like, oh, sometimes there's a line that doesn't have that thing in it, or sometimes there's
can't throw an error if it's empty.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Small things like that.
But and making it flexible, because like when I work with a lot of clients,
Excel has some good out of the box filtering. But I don't know if you're trying to like just migrate some data, or if you're trying to have like an on the fly thing, or
it's like a web app
that's just gonna do it constantly.
I don't know, but the user submits, and it's not even that complex. It's just like well, I didn't think it was that complex, but it's just 2 tiers of information, and then it outputs the third level, but it has to associate it with like information like 2 databases up, if that makes any sense. Because I have this database, like it gets things assigned to this one, gets things assigned to this one, but then gets things assigned to this lateral thing. Yep. So, might be too niche of a conversation, but
no, I know what you mean. But
I'm like, okay, I see how that would happen if I had like, when I explain it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's not that crazy. But then when I have to code that out, I'm like, okay, and it depends on the platform.
There are some basic, and there are some simple solutions to stuff like that, right? Looking at, and I remember, I'm speaking from my experience, like dealing with all these databases, I would have to write separate queries, store the database, and then do all this. I would manually do all of the querying, but through iterative and like logic of like, okay, now let's go through this array.
And I like low-key don't know how to query.
So the queries and SQL is like, that seems to be where all the power is at. Like if you can, from my understanding, if you can, because you're getting it at the base level, right? If you can get the data all right first, then like SQL is really, really good. The way that it's stored, at least in MySQL, most contemporary SQL databases, like they're all not just stored in a nice list. It's all like these advanced hash tables that are like all have all this metadata that like you query things.
And
but it's all behind the scenes.
How things are networked.
It's all behind the scenes like thing. Like you still one of the things I used was a union clause, like which is like you have this table and this thing has a union with the other table through this one specific entry. So then using the union clause, it returns as if it's one table, but with all of the extra columns from that other table that you asked for as well. So I have these I've had these long union clauses where I have 5 or 6 databases that all like kind of link with each other. But you call them all based on what they're linked with each other, but then you get left with this nice table that has all the data there instead of having to filter through all of them one by one. But I don't know that just changed my world when I figured out how to do it. And
that's really cool. That's above and beyond what this client needs.
I had some training in databases and stuff, but never really. Well, let's be honest. In my databases class, I didn't really work too hard and didn't really do the homework. Dude,
that was me in Java. Dude, just got through
my databases teacher at Marquette, he taught my dad who was at Marquette. And
generations.
He is so old. Mr. Dr. Harris. So his daughter just got married last weekend. But he was old. He was borderline senile when I was there, and that's what my dad said too. So it's like 30 years later.
Been senile.
But he was there, from day one, man, from the dawn of the internet and all that stuff. But then he knew all these advanced databases. He still knew what was going on, but it was basically I say I barely did the homework. That's because the class was half the time he had. For some reason, they decided to use the oldest guy as the person to test the telelecturing with. So they had a camera that was pointing at him, and I remember he would always joke with one of the foreign kids in the first row that to always tell him to turn it on, but the guy didn't. I don't think the kid understood that he was just kind of busting his chops, so it's part of his humor. He's like, "You didn't tell me to put it on," joking, and the kid gets
oh crap.
I was like, everything he says is he would always go on tangents. Half the classes was just him tangenting about who knows what his stories about. So I didn't really learn too much of the database, but when I looked it up online,
tangents are valuable information, but then sometimes they are just a true tangent. Sometimes they
I heard that tangent
nuggets.
Yesterday.
Especially with saying. I was about to say, I feel like giving someone a hard time feels like a maybe not uniquely American thing, but it's super notorious.
Busting your balls.
Just busting your balls, yeah. Especially
taking the piss.
East Coast. Oh, that's true. You know what? Yeah.
Maybe it's just a Western, British thing.
I feel like Germans don't do that.
Yeah, right? Maybe they don't. Any Germans?
Or
Jake, do they do it in the Netherlands? I know it's not Germany, but there might be some Europeans watching. Anyone in the comments, if you bust each other's balls.
Yeah. Or it's kind of, sometimes there's a certain kind of tone to it. I feel like for the Brits and stuff, it's pretty deadpan sometimes, and that's why a lot of Americans don't like British humor, because they're just oh, it sounds so mean all the time.
Right. We're here, people are better at. You can tell. I feel like I don't know. Most people probably can tell when someone's saying something meanly with ill intention, or maybe not. Sometimes also.
I can be kind of deadpan.
Sensitivity. People. I don't know. I don't want to say people are more sensitive now, but maybe they are, and maybe for good reasons.
I think it also depends on your age as well, because I was so emotionally sensitive. I'm still sensorily sensitive. But yeah, when I was like 14, 15, my parents would always say like, you need to get a thicker skin, you need to build up a thicker skin. And that was so true. And I mean, but also when like everyone, when you're 14, 15, but some kids, they just don't care any which way. But yeah, it's a valuable skill and it comes with time. And I suppose some people never quite get there, but it does seem like as you age a little bit, you just get slightly less sensitive.
Just get over it.
Can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's like this isn't like we already went through high school. We don't. And then that's what I feel like with high school. Maybe that's my peak sensitivity, or maybe grade school. Maybe like 8th grade, freshman year in high school is probably peak sensitivity.
Well, and that's such a transformative time too, and you kind of get your chance to reinvent your identity.
Exactly.
And sometimes if people knew you before, they don't like give you the space to do that. They give you a really hard time for it.
Rifts start to happen, and then Janie,
college is a nice clean break.
Janie hates Martha, and Martha said something about Benny. And Benny started getting into heroin. And
Where'd you go to high school?
Poor Benny. But no, my freshman year, that's got to have been the peak awkwardness. I remember I was like so like super concerned over my, like, just for a brief period at the very beginning of high school, I was very concerned about like what I was wearing and like how my hair looked and how I was presented in front of other people.
Did you ever have braces?
I did. I had braces, but they came off right before high school, which was dope.
Lucky. That's good.
But I got glasses and braces at the same time in 5th grade.
Transformation.
Or maybe it was before then. Oh yeah.
That's how you get the good.
I had some nasty teeth though. Like, there was a couple of teeth that were like.
And now you're renowned for your teeth.
I'm renowned for my teeth.
Me too.
I mean, I just had braces, so they literally it was like 2 years. They just cranked that stuff in place and just.
Did you have a palate expander? Talk about crank stuff.
No.
So, it's barbaric.
Palate
it's
expander?
So it's like a metal thing. No, it's a real thing. So they mount it. They mount it on your molars, and then there's this kind of like contraption in the middle, and there's a key, and you're supposed to every X amount of days turn the key, and it cranks it open a little bit.
You had one of those?
Yeah, I can't explain to you.
You had a key inside your mouth?
No, I had to, like, the key was a separate thing, so I had a lock inside my mouth that was this, like, opening thing. Look it up online later. Look up a palate expander. It's barbaric.
How is this legal?
And I had a power chain.
What?
So it's like I expand my palate, and then the other teeth I have to, like, compress together. Because I had kind of a small palate, like my teeth were too big for my mouth.
That's like you said to me too. They just took out 4 of my teeth and said, "All right, now you got more room."
I think we kept all of them except for the wisdom teeth, but the wisdom teeth were coming in sideways. I didn't even get those out until college time. But yeah, the palate expander, barbaric.
Yeah, because I got 4 tooths. 4 tooths. No, 4 teeth taken out at the same time. And that's because they said that. I said my teeth were too big for my. And they were like, "You got your dad's teeth in your mom's mouth."
Well, yeah, it's all funny to them. They're like, "Oh, I love this shit." Like, let me
just.
Yeah.
I remember I wasn't under for those 4 root canals. They just did it one after one. They just went boom, 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 and my mouth was just.
It sounds like a literal nightmare.
Bleeding everywhere.
Oh my god!
But then
you're gonna traumatize me.
When they went again and took the 4 wisdom teeth out after a few years later. But
wow.
But
wait, so actually, do you not have? Do you only have premolars?
They took out the teeth right before my braces, and they took out the teeth right behind the canines.
Oh.
Yeah, these ones.
So those guys, they just migrated forward by themselves?
Forward, yeah. Well, because they were like, well, we're going to do the braces, so this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
This is the perfect time to move these motherfuckers.
They're like, now that your gums are jelly.
Yeah, right? Now that you're under extreme duress.
Yeah. It's like, you can't do anything about it.
But wait, I'm still getting wrapping my head around the fact that you had a key that had like...
I'm going to pull up a palate expander.
So this is essentially like if anyone's listening who has used like those disposable deodorant things where you have one of those gears that you turn that move the deodorant slightly up. Is that what that is? But in your mouth and between your palates?
Okay, here's a good diagram. So it looks... So this image on the bottom, it looks like this medieval thing, and it just...
Oh, I see.
Incrementally.
Oh, it moves it.
So it moves your molars outwards and just like reshapes your palate. And people do if your palate's too... Maybe yours was even too developed.
Magic.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if this will.
No, it won't. It absolutely won't. But
It's so small too. The one on bottom.
Which way is it? You can see it.
I don't know. It's a little metal thing on the bottom one. This is brutal.
Okay. Basically, we got some lower teeth, and I was imagining.
They can only do that on the upper, I'm pretty sure.
So
if there's crowdy on the lower, I bet they gotta just pull them out.
They got a gear that's pointing outwards, out towards your teeth from inside your mouth, and they're pushing it out. Whoa, yeah, that's better.
Oh no.
Wait, other one, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yikes. So the key goes in the middle of that thing.
So this is a modern practice?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem too crazy. Now that I'm looking at it, it seems pretty. It seems similar, like to braces.
Very painful when.
It's
yeah,
like
it's almost like. Oh, did you ever have those spacers too? It's like a comparable amount of pain.
How many things did you have in your mouth?
Dude, and I just had that oral surgery. I had to do it like twice because I had a recessed gum. I don't think we knew each other when I had all my oral surgeries.
So when you were a kid, the dentist was like, "What's that mouth do?" We'll find out.
I hope not. What am I gonna do to that mouth? No, I had so many dentists and orthodontists that
Maybe that's your problem. Maybe what if you didn't need any of this? What if half of the stuff was all, I don't know. I mean,
well, it was for science, the Marquette School of Dentistry. That's who done it. Yeah, we didn't pay full price. That was expensive too.
Yeah. No, I hear.
My brother had braces too. Yeah, it ended up working for us.
I got some family in the Marquette Dentistry, and shout out to Amy Hurley and other people.
Oh, well, and the reason I needed this second, like, I had an oral surgery, I want to say last December. Well, it was in several parts, but I basically had a gum recessed all the way to the root. I did not expect to be talking about this. A gum recessed all the way to the root, just one of them. And I had to get a skin graft from the roof of my mouth, transplanted on there. I did that once in college. It didn't take. And so they had to do it.
Didn't graft it right?
Didn't graft it right. This time they did it in a couple parts. They prepped the thing.
Piecewise graft.
Which
They prepped it?
Yeah, I don't know what he did to me. Yeah, basically they beat it up a bit.
Like a steak?
Yeah. It's just
before you throw it on the grill.
Smacked it around a bit and then took the separate and then a separate surgery they grafted, and then they had to do that a second time too. So I had to have a little stent that protected that site. So I had 2 sites.
The dentists pretty much give me the heebie-jeebies. I shouldn't say dentists.
My orthodontist
dentists don't give me the heebie-jeebies. Going to the dentist gives me
them themselves.
When I was last time I went, which was great, I had a great experience. I thought I had some issues with my mouth or my tooth. I think there was something I might have hurt myself with some sunflower seeds when I was touring in California. Seeds. But I think it ended up just being kind of stress related, like pain in my side that was going down into I was clenching my jaw or something. Because I went and they did a bunch of x-rays and they cleaned it out and stuff, and they're just like, come, and there was a canker sore there, and he's just like, it's a canker sore.
Sometimes canker sores can cause that, and you don't believe them. You're like, bullshit, like I'm suffering and you don't understand, and then it heals and it goes away.
I've had canker sores my whole life, but this one was pretty bad. But I went, and it was the first time in a while I had gone, and they went straight into it. It was the dentist and the dental hygienist. And, before I knew it, I was just there, and they had both had 2 instruments each in my mouth. And I'm sitting there, and I can feel my heart rate going up. And I can, feel my eyes, my vision starting to, come
Did they, not explain anything to you? Did they just
they were just like, yeah, we'll take a look. And they just started going in. I was like, I had no, whoa, give me a heads up or something. The hygienist didn't speak English too well. But he was really, really nice, and but they just dove in, and it was, it's routine for them, right?
I was just thinking that.
It's been a while since I was there, and I I was like, it's okay, and it's okay. You're just at the dentist. This is what dentists do. Yeah. Try to lower my heart rate, and just whew. But there was a moment there where I was like, this could go off the rails. What if I freak out and
Oh yeah, I've had panic attacks before the oral surgery stuff.
Yeah, see, that's why a lot of surgeries. I had some major surgery when I was in high school, and before the surgery they just gave me Valium.
Yeah, right.
And they were just like, that's the stuff to like warm you up to going to get the stuff that.
Yeah, to get the real stuff.
To get the real stuff.
They asked me for the most recent ones if I needed anything like that, but then they're like, oh, if we give you this and like someone's got to drop you off and it's going to cost all this extra because we basically have to like babysit you while you're like kind of out of commission. And it was going to be like an extra $200 or $300. And I'm like, I'll be fine. I was like, I'll just cry a little. It'll be okay.
$200 for just a Valium?
Yeah, they're going to give me one pill. And then it was basically the fee for like the fact that I had to be like a little bit supervised. And I was like, this seems fake.
You couldn't have like a parent or a guardian or a friend?
I don't know. I'm sure I had to.
HIPAA compliance.
The laughing gas did the trick, but
laughing gas does that.
The most recent place I went to, they have like a spa vibe, and so I want to go there forever for everything, just because it felt like a little therapy session
just
too.
Get a little inspired.
Because I had all these problems with my gums and stuff, and I was telling them about that, and then at the end of the consultation, they're like, "Well, what do you like about your teeth?" And I was like, "Oh, it's so sweet. It's such a nice." No one's ever asked me before. I was like, oh, well, they're big, and I like my smile, and but yeah, now the gum is better than the other one.
Yeah, right.
Better than ever. I was super gum.
Bionic gum.
Yep.
Yeah, So I'm assuming then in this manuscript you have a couple poems about your gums and your teeth.
Dude, I have one.
Okay.
And I only just like finished it just the other day over the weekend.
Do you use enamel in the poem?
No, the word enamel, that is a nice word. Oh. It's kind of like a Bill Dung's roman of sorts.
What's that?
A coming of age story.
Oh.
But it's not personified gums or anything, but yeah, I like it. Yeah. Well, no, it's like I meant, there's something adolescent about braces and stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't even talk about the recent things, but I'm sure it seeps through. I do have kind of that's like one running theme through all my poetry is kind of anatomical stuff. Somehow I took this anatomy class in high school. I had like a college level anatomy class. We had this thing called Connect Ed, so you could take over the course of a semester of high school, you get over the course of a year of high school, you get a semester's worth, or like 4 credits for college. And so, like, it was like as though I were a Mount Mary college, like, attendee. I don't know. But all that stuff fascinated me so much, and it really stuck with me. And I love some of those, like, terms and words, and I've got favorite bones and stuff. And so bones and things like that make a lot of appearances.
And then the knee bone said to the teeth, brace yourself.
Yeah. The hip bone connected to that.
That was your anatomy class? Just someone up there singing that.
It was a lot of coloring.
And everyone writing down quickly. What is he saying? Is it connected to the what?
Yeah.
Did you get the notes?
So much
Did you understand what that professor was saying at all? He just kept singing.
Yeah. Actually, that was a fantastic teacher at Divine Savior Holy Angels, and she is no longer with us. Yeah, she died of ovarian cancer, which was, I think, like one of the kind of wake-up calls for me and my mom to start like deep diving into that kind of stuff too, because breast cancer and ovarian cancer are linked, and I actually kind of want to talk about this publicly more often. I just like haven't figured out like where to wedge it in, but the whole I think I'm kind of maybe going to do something for like Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but my mom was she was diagnosed with cancer when I was like, I want to say 3 or something. It was really in her like late 30s. It was early. And she's like totally cancer free now and has been thriving. But she has a genetic mutation, the BRCA1 mutation. And then I recently got tested in March, and I tested positive for this genetic mutation. So that means that I've got to be extra careful about that kind of stuff. And then also
double up your checkups.
Yeah, which is the more sinister. I had to do all sorts of like crazy stuff that like people my age don't have to do, like MRIs and things. I got to schedule that. But ovarian cancer is a lot more sinister because at least with breast cancer, there tends to be like a lump or something. But with ovarian cancer, like it's really hard to detect that. So a lot of times after women are done child rearing, or if they don't intend to, then they just get those taken right out.
Yeah, you don't need them anymore.
Who needs it? I don't barely even know. We'll see.
Let's get over these ovaries.
Yeah. just plop them in when you need them. Take them out when you don't.
Can you do that?
I don't think so.
You can't, like, it's not like...
Put them on ice.
Yeah, just keep them in the fridge.
Get a little incubator.
Grandma, what's these? Just in case, honey. You never know.
She's like, don't knock them over. It's like, why are they next to the pickles?
Oh my god. Or the pickled eggs. Jeez.
Don't put those on the Bloody Mary.
No, yeah, I think those experiences. Yeah, I think you're right about those braces in adolescence. Like, and I often find that there's a reaction when I'm like meeting people past their adolescence, or like people that in their adulthood who get braces and stuff.
Oh yeah,
like,
my mom had braces when she was pregnant with me.
Oh my gosh.
I shit you not. It was either when she was pregnant with me or pregnant with my brother. So everyone thought she was a teen mom because she's like 5'2", right. And she looks pretty young. We basically look the same. If anything, like I've almost, because I'm taller, I end up like looking older than she did at my age. But yeah, everyone thought she was a teen mom.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I wonder then if people, yeah, because I was going to say, my own reactions talking to people who I know aren't teenagers or obviously, because I've either met them before and those they get braces, or I'm meeting them the first time, but I know that they're not. They have a beard or something, you know. It's pretty obvious. But I always have this weird, like, first, like, oh, wait, you're not a kid, like, thing in my head, or I have to, like, do that first little bit of mental math and, like, be like, and, like, get over that.
It's got to be so painful, too, while your bones are a little bit older, they're not as malleable. And a lot of people are doing Invisalign, actually.
Yeah.
But even that is still painful, and they've got all these different trays and stuff, and if you don't keep up with it, you got to regress. Like, at least with braces, like, they stay in there, and, I mean, I actually still have braces on the bottom of my teeth, but behind my teeth.
Whoa.
So it's like a permanent retainer, that's what they call it, which is nice, because I can guarantee... Well, I mean, yeah, until I get it out, it stays in there. It's like soldered in or whatever. Your face.
Because I've had so many nightmares about. I used to have.
Don't get a magnet too close to me.
I was gonna say I had this retainer in my mouth for a little bit that ended up like breaking off, and so it was like stuck in my mouth for like a little bit. So I always have these recurring nightmares that it's still in there, and that it's like.
Oh yeah, I've had teeth falling out nightmares. And stuff.
Yeah, the teeth falling out thing. I mean, that's
pretty classic.
Yeah,
classic nightmare.
Oh my god, my teeth. But like, I don't know the like foreign object in your like cutting up your mouth, like that's always
horrifying.
That's a little.
No, these seem pretty stable in there, and I don't know what you were eating, but I don't need anything that will like break these wires. I don't think.
Laffy Taffies.
Laffy Taffies. I'm not really into that kind of stuff.
Laffy. In my high school, my freshman year, I was going through this phase of like.
Girl shake that Laffy Taffy.
Not that. I don't even know if that song came out by then. It was what's the word? I'm trying to like use a euphemism for stealing shit.
Sticky fingers.
Kleptocracy? No, kleptocracy. No, kleptomania.
Yeah, that's not euphemism. That's just a term.
Yeah, but it sounds nicer when it's like at a scientific term instead of just stealing shit.
Yeah, it's like I took things.
Hey, I'm a kleptomaniac. I'm certified. It's documentation.
I'm a card-carrying kleptomaniac.
I would steal energy drinks and like candy and shit when I was like just to like.
Like all adolescents have a
I don't know.
Phase.
You know, you got to find out what you got to find out what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and sometimes to do that you got to do try the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But
like Catholic guilt really washes over you.
Yeah. Oh yes, I feel something. but I would steal Laffy Taffies at lunchtime. Almost like every day for
Karma's
a while.
a bitch, ain't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that's where the karma came out.
Yeah, I hope it's all out
and that's still in there.
Yeah, how long does karma incubate for?
For generations.
Oh,
well, no, it's multiple lifetimes.
Oh, fuck.
It's the next chump's problem. But I used to eat that shit. I remember there was this watermelon Laffy Taffy, and I just loved like grabbing it and just like, and there's that breaking point. I just felt like yes,
satisfying.
I am breaking this Laffy Taffy.
That's control chaos right there.
Yeah, right. But no, it didn't last that long of the phase, but it was there. It was pervasive. And then I started hanging out with different people and started to take, Oh,
did people encourage you to steal? Were you hanging out with a bad crowd? Did I just turn into a mom? But a mom interviewer?
I don't know if they...
Like, no judgment?
Maybe they did encourage me. I don't know. Like, there were some kids that were more prone to doing that. And my freshman year, yeah, I feel like I was getting new friends and figuring out which friends I should hang around with, and
I feel like I was that friend. I didn't encourage other people to steal, but I have a vivid memory
just get that Laffy Taffy for me, and I'll like you forever.
Well, I have a vivid memory of like stealing a pack of gum when I was pretty young, and then they showed me on the security footage that I stole it. I think I was like below 10 years old though.
That's the time to do it though.
I knew what I was doing, but I had to play dumb. But right, I'm like, so does that make me the friend? Because no one told me to. I just felt inspired.
No, you're like, the gum's right there. I can just have it. Why would I?
If you don't like completely wrap your mind around, or I think like,
you see, Megan, we live in a capitalist society. We have ownership of private property.
Yeah. It's like, you got to work your life away to buy
I
shit you don't need, like that gum.
You own me. Yes, you have no rights.
Yeah.
No,
and I think
children have rights.
Took a few during high school, like miscellaneous accessories from Forever 21 as a good 14-year-old would.
Of course. Yeah, see.
Awful.
Same thing. Energy drinks. That was our shenanigans.
Yeah.
We would have that, and we would go and.
I can't believe we're talking about our life of crime.
That's all it goes to, and I'm pretty sure what's that?
Statute of limitations. on the $3.
These are all manufactured fiction stories for the sake of entertainment.
And we've never mentioned any brands, so they can't sue us for damages. Oh shit.
I was talking about the song, which is no.
Yeah.
No, I think high school was a very strange thing. I feel like I was just about to go into a different segue.
Do you want to hear about other crime that I did?
Sure.
Okay. So,
it's more entertaining than whatever I was going to come up with.
When I was like, I want to say, well, I must have been 16 or 17, I would get an older friend for the neighborhood to buy Black & Mild cigars for everyone. Those are like those thinner, smaller cigars with like the wooden cap. They're not quite cigarillos because I think those are like cigarette size, but they're like longer and thinner. And have a friend buy those, and I would like sell them to my friends. Well, and a sad twist of events, and this is almost
just lay it all out. This is a safe place. No one's watching.
Is this a safe space? So like,
no one's listening.
So I was like, picking up the stuff, like negotiating on MySpace, like, oh, can you get some more black, some more black and mild. So yeah, I said, can you get some more blacks? Like, and I left my MySpace up with the message like thread there on the home computer. This is back when we had a home computer, and you couldn't just take your computer in your pocket with you and never get in trouble. But I left that up, and then when I came home, my parents thought that I was like involved in moving like black tar heroin, because my dad was like, he's like, in the 80s, blacks was, black tar heroin. It's heroin. I was like, how do you think I got into that? When did I?
Do I seem like a black tar heroin kid?
Yeah, I have many questions about how you thought I got involved in a ring.
Black tar heroin is the most pure of all heroin.
The price point.
You think that I would be doing this? No.
You're like, it's like, no, I'd prefer. I cut that shit down and I sell it.
Home computers, man. I had a similar thing back in Kazaa days. You remember Kazaa?
I don't think I knew Kazaa.
Before LimeWire.
Oh shit.
And right around the time of Morpheus and all those other, it was
LimeWire was a peer-to-peer file sharing.
Yeah. P2P.
P2P. Which, like, how the heck? I was under the impression that was legal somehow. I mean, it technically wasn't illegal yet, peer-to-peer file sharing. Well, but for copyright materials, yes.
Yeah, for copyright things, it's peer-to-peer is not illegal. Like but sharing. Yeah. Quote unquote illegally obtained things, or like something that's been obtained through an illegal process, sharing that's the gray area. That's a weird thing, like, and even hosting that, right? So like a lot of these, the most famous peer-to-peer, those networks didn't last very long, because there was always a central hub, like these clients that use it. So you're essentially Kazaa or LimeWire, it's peer-to-peer network clients. And a client is just something that connects to a network. So there is this like metadata network of like that they have of all the different people on the network and what they have.
You can dynamically search things.
Right. So like technically, like things like Napster or whatever. Like I think they were even hosting things, and they had so that's even just
even they
you can't do that. So now
they had like a flat fee, and that was one problem too. Is that like you couldn't reimburse the artists consistently because it was like $6 a month and you can download however much you want. Like what?
Yeah, right.
It was a all you can eat buffet.
I mean, I love the like universality of that, universalness of that. Which Spotify
model.
has now. It took them long enough, right?
Yeah.
But
it always has to have ads though. I feel like to be properly fair to some extent. Yeah, because then they have to be able to convert for watch time or for like, that's why like a flat fee for these. I mean, YouTube's making it work on a small scale for like with YouTube Red and stuff, but even so, they wouldn't want everyone to have YouTube Red because then no one, like even Spotify Premium, they don't want everyone to have it because they make more money on ad revenue. And I mean, I just did a Spotify trial for 99 cents for 3 months, so they got to pay the artist somehow. And it's ads for sure. Other people's ads, maybe. Yeah,
people continue to listen to things on Spotify if you want, but I feel like it's a tough thing because you have these systems that are in place. These giant behemoth like Spotify is now huge, and I mean
they tried to like pick fights with Apple Music all the time.
Yeah,
too.
well, I mean, at least someone's fighting something, even if it's just corporate overlords fighting corporate overlords.
There's got to be some competition.
But like, I know that I'm getting like hundredth of a cent per play or something, like, and it adds up when you got a lot of listeners, but. I just imagine if I was able to monetize all those things on my side, and that's part of what it is. Like you're on that platform.
You pay for the network.
But there are networks that are. I know Bandcamp is really fair. Like they don't take barely anything.
It's just credit card processing.
Apple and iTunes, like they've been a little better, but there's way less people on that than Spotify. But the peer-to-peer,
kind of the way that
I used to have, well, I still do. I have like torrents of most of my albums like available on my site and stuff. Because torrenting is a very effective and efficient way of
just give me all of it
of transmitting data. So essentially, like it is a peer-to-peer file sharing protocol. Or if people aren't familiar with torrents, it's essentially you have a group of people that are connected to one central tracking server, and they all broadcast this thing like, I have this data in this amounts and all this bits of this certain files, all these lists of files or whatever. And so anyone can just download it and then be uploading it at all times. And so then anyone who wants to download, they're downloading it from chunks. From it optimizes where to like download from. So you could be downloading from.
That's why it's so much faster.
50 people across the whole world, but you're only downloading a 10 megabyte file, and so but you're downloading the second chunk of data from this part of the world and the 10th chunk from this part of the world.
Just whatever is faster.
Yeah, and I mean some clients determine that, or they just connect to the closest one maybe, or the highest speeds, and then just boom, get it all. But I mean, that stuff is, torrents aren't used. They're used still, like in a lot of it's like total nerd environments, like all open source places. Like you can still download. I
feel like the lay people are afraid of viruses and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good. That's the Kazaa thing that brought me up was when you were talking about leaving something open, and the experience I had with the family room computer of leaving something. My mom figured out that you could open up Kazaa, and she found we were able to download movies and stuff, and literally she went and typed something in.
Find porn.
Well, she didn't find porn, but she found a search for porn. So I literally typed lesbian porn and searched that on Kazaa. I don't even think I mean, and this goes to show you some of those networks about it's not all. I downloaded what I thought was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, I think it was. It was the British one. But the one I can think is right when that movie came out, literally the day after.
So first you got duped, and then it planted the seed.
Right. So I got duped, and then I opened it up, and it was lesbian. It was like a softcore shower scene.
You're like,
between two girls.
This is a great idea.
Dude, it was like one of the most euphoric moments. Not euphoric. Maybe it's a Freudian slip.
You're like, I've never been happier
Eureka
than that
moments.
day.
That's what I meant to say. But then I was like, I remember thinking and looking at it, and I was like confused. I'm like, oh wow, she's getting. And then she went into a shower and starts to like cleaning, with like, but like just like cleaning like a shampoo ad or something, But then all of a sudden, someone else started like this other lady showed up, and then she went to, and they just started taking a shower together.
How old were you?
Whenever Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone came out.
That was the first one. That was like, was that 99 or it was 2000? Well, Phantom Menace was 2001. I think they came out around the same time. Oh no, it was 99.
I would have been. No, I gotta have been older than 8. Well, no, maybe 8. No,
I still remember because like the movie started coming out before the book series was all done.
Right.
So, a transformative time.
It's a very transformative time.
A eureka moment.
It was a eureka moment. I remember I exclaimed out loud. I was like, oh my God, they're lesbians. And there was like this huge, like, now I understand what a lesbian is. Like, finally. I've heard this word so many times in grade school. What are these people saying what this is? I never looked.
You're like, aha.
It's like, I knew it had something to do with that.
It's not a kind of bean. Lesbian.
Oh, a lesbian. The beans.
You ever reading old books? Yeah. Are you ever reading something and they'll say like, instead of exclaimed, they'll be like blah 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 ejaculated?
Yeah.
I was about to say that for you.
That's what I should have said. Yeah.
I don't want to assume.
So then I ejaculated. Oh my God, they're lesbians. No, and erected. People used to say erected a lot more back in the day.
Erected is a little bit more common than
erecting a statue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't raise you that way. Anyways, do we have any questions from people?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I didn't preface that. If anyone has any questions.
Someone said something
about lesbian porn.
So
we have some experts here.
Whoever's listening on Anchor.fm or on Spotify or on Google, because this goes out to all the masses, the audio version. But you can tune in live. We're talking live, and there are people who are also watching us, but they are also communicating with each other and with us
amongst them,
through the power of YouTube and the internet. So you can always go and find this live.
And we can't cut out any regrettable statements.
Only the people that are watching will be able to see the true thing. But we can. I mean, I can trim things. It doesn't go straight to the audio podcast. I have to go look at the audio and make sure it's all good and trim it and look at it.
Cool.
But shine it up. Shine it up. Spiffy it up. Make sure it's audible. But I think this might be the best sounding podcast so far. We'll see. But yeah, we're just at
anything. Or?
An hour and 7 minutes.
Oh, well, I could go for a little while.
Yeah, we can move on to something else for a little bit longer. Like, this is the part where we could probably cut out, right? Where we're just talking.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Doing logistics.
Who knows?
But, yeah, were there any questions?
Do you know Dom, man?
I don't know. Is it someone who knows me personally?
No, he's just an Instagram dude.
Oh, okay. They're just saying hi from Instagram?
No, he asked something. Megan, what do you think about the technical definition of poetry? I need parameters, metrical writing.
Oh, yeah. It's tough because, I...
He said I had a question
an hour ago. Oh, my God.
So at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, that's straight at the beginning. Yeah, that's interesting because I had a teacher. He was a teacher of mine for like Shakespeare, journalism, all sorts of stuff. And he was saying, I don't remember whose quote it was, but they're, probably a very traditional poet. I feel like it was Robert Frost, but I could have sworn he does free verse. But they were saying that writing poetry without parameters is like playing tennis with the net down, and that it's like way too easy.
Sure.
But I think there's more and more definitions of poetry now, but to some extent, and even with my own work, I see it goes through movements of being just like kind of lyrical stream of not stream of consciousness because it's very particular, but like these kind of like lyrical narratives. And I just like decided to make a bunch of line breaks, and now it's a poem. So the line is fine with that. But yeah, I suppose it's kind of the newer frontier for poetry, and it gives you space to explore other things. I do kind of, if I'm going to if I'm gonna be that guy, I do find poetry kind of boring if it doesn't adhere to any meter, but then it also doesn't play with any other elements of like traditional poetic elements, like wordplay or some sort of kind of special enunciations. If it just feels like a text message that's just like, oh shit, that's deep, like it doesn't feel incredibly poetic to me. But I mean, who am I to determine that? It's all, kind of up to the beholder. But there are definitions for a reason. I think it's helpful to wrap your mind around certain kind of traditional things. But I mean, I love meter, but I like to upset meter a lot. So I like to kind of like disrupt it pretty often or lapse into it. And so it's kind of I sometimes have a meandering approach to poetry, because I kind of, I let it kind of go where it wants to go. And then sometimes I wrangle things back in, or, but, I do like the kind of, to me, poems, they're kind of expressions of moments, and that's what distinguishes poetry from a full-fledged narrative. Now, some poems are very narrative-like, and they have almost like a 3-act structure to them, but I've always felt that Something of Mine is a poem because it maybe doesn't tell a full-fledged story, but it tells an experience, or it tells a vignette, a kind of mood and emotion. And sometimes you can accomplish that without some of the traditional stuff. Although even, things can have meter and not rhyme, and things can rhyme and have no meter, and they're all options. All of our options are options.
If you don't have parameters, poetry.
If you don't have parameters, then poetry is sometimes it's no rhymes at all.
Yeah, rhyme. There's a lot of internal rhyme and and near rhyme.
Assonance, dissonance.
Yeah.
I like doing stuff where it's like it's gonna be a near rhyme, but then I choose a different word. Like I made a joke or like a poem that's kind of like a lot of wordplay, and I hope people get it, but I don't know, maybe I'll have to like analyze it for people to get it sometimes. But I'm making this kind of like slant rhyme, or not slant rhyme, but like a kind of inferred thing, because I'm like talking about marrow, or I'm talking about something being narrow, or it was like, I think I said marrow earlier in it, and then I say thin instead of narrow, you know what I mean? Like at the end of it, so it feels like, oh, she used like a synonym instead of the thing that rhymed. So it's kind of like you gotta like really have a solid grasp of English, and maybe your mind is going there. But I do it enough times that hopefully it's like a noticeable choice.
No, yeah, that can be a good method. I feel like I've done that where you're leading them to one place and then you end somewhere else, and then
music will do that a lot. Yeah.
Even with the words. Like the refrain's always the same, but then the last refrain is different.
You're like,
wait, that's not what I expected.
That's a special one.
This is not a narrow. Yeah, and I from my experience with poetry, and you can talk about like the constraints and rhyme and stuff, like I come from maybe a similar viewpoint where I don't see there to be too many rules per se. It really is kind of what people is like any piece of artwork in any medium. Like there are specific rules you have to adhere to. Poetry is still words on some sort of, it's usually just words, right? Some paper, on digitally, whatever.
Yeah,
spoken. Yeah, you can hear it. That's interesting. Is there's poetry that's non-verbal, like there's poetry that shouldn't be, that people write intentionally not to be said, or poems that are intentionally made to be said, and things all have meter. If you really want to talk about like things, technically always have meter.
Yeah.
You're never not gonna have
whether it's consistent.
Yeah, usually having but following the traditions of meter, which there are specific traditions, especially in American and English poetry.
Limericks.
Like specific meters where they have specific ways of doing it. But there are also reasons why those things exist too. I think they're easy to they're made to memorize things, and because maybe they're done, and that's what melodies and language are. Like I feel like a lot of melody through language is just ways for us to be able to have their tools and little tricks to memorize and to like portray certain ideas and emotions. Like if you're saying certain things in your language in a certain meter, people are going to be listening to you a little differently. You know, like even some great. I think that's part of like even with Obama with his narration, his meter, and how
I was just thinking speeches and people's meter.
Yeah, and so like those are very useful. But if you're just trying to portray this essence of this moment that's really personal, I don't think you should have any rules when you're creating something that's more artistic or more creative. Yeah. But if you're trying to reach the broadest amount of people, I think you still need that meter. I think you still, because people, I don't know, it's hard.
Oh, like there's a certain accessibility.
Exactly. Yeah. You can digest when there's meter.
It's funny because people almost think that meter is kind of a lofty thing, like while writing it, but then when you deliver it to the masses, it's like experimental music versus like pop music.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. It's like if you have a verse, chorus, people are going to be able to listen to it, and they're going to be able to know what's coming next.
Like, oh, I love this part.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my jam.
Yeah. But when it's, there's a piece where you don't know what's going to come next, and sometimes it's dissonant, and sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Anxiety-inducing.
Yeah, and that's powerful in its own way. So I think that's part of like maybe what's happened more recently with modernity and postmodernism is like
exploring dissonance.
Well, just the kind of language is starting to break down. All these rules are starting to break down. Like
communication breakdown.
Yeah, like people are purposefully breaking these things down, and I think people need to know the limits. So like poetry, and that's kind of poetry is kind of can explain and is the voice of I think culture at its essence. Like you look at the poets that are kind of like the heart of it all. Like you listen to, and I think mainly even more to their credit is that they're doing it with not many people listening or watching.
I was about to say, with like zero glory.
Right, so like, yeah, exactly. But a lot of times it's the poets that are influencing the other creative types and stuff like, and maybe it's, I think all creatives are influencing each other, but poets have a particular role in society.
Well, it's a very distilled version of other mediums too, like you're saying.
Right.
Music and lyrics are poetry.
So easy to get it,
things.
and you can dress it up so nicely through sound, and you can trick people into listening and stuff. With poetry,
there's like the entry point. Poetry, like I say, right, you can't even give that shit away. Like
no, exactly. It's like, all right,
yeah, and someone could literally buy your poetry book and never read it. It's just one of those things, and like
that's why I think for poetry and performance, people that are really great poets that are also great poets, that are also great performers, and that's where the meter can come into play and stuff. Is that if you like you were just saying, if you know the constraints. And that's why it's important, I think, anyone to study art, like to study the constraints. And I think don't just be like, I need to do all these constraints, and like adhere to them, and there's never any option. Because I feel like when I was growing up, I would always be like, no genres, no meter, no this. I'll make my own thing, and it's going to be new, but it's not. It's just like I'm still digesting all of the other things, and I'm still writing in meter, and I'm still doing it, but I'm just doing it in a kind of disjointed way. But I think what I was going to say is a lot of that confusion with should poetry rhyme, should it not, or I think that is and just the idea of the constraints on art, and I think that reflects the society, and it reflects what the questions people are having in the culture of like, don't really know what the rules are here, like how are we supposed to live our lives in this crazy world with all these different things. And when you see a poet be able to break those barriers, or be able to like, here's the rules, like I'm setting up this rule, breaking it right in front of you, right there, as their own device.
Really purposeful too.
Yeah, and when it's purposeful, it's like, look, I just broke my routine. I just broke this. I just said that I was going to be thin or narrow every time, and now I didn't. I decided it was something else. Yeah. Like that as a device. Like people.
And in conversation with a kind of history, like you were saying, like there's always that other stuff percolating in your head, and you can't really divorce your brain from it. And if anything, it's better to incrementally move the needle forward and kind of be in conversation with other traditions. That's like, I went to school for graphic design. I studied a bunch of art history, and things end up being important because they're in conversation with other things and in context. And a lot of times when stuff is like so avant-garde and you can't kind of locate where the conversation went, it feels like completely non sequitur, then
it's hard to make progress. It's hard to
it's hard to categorize, because like the human brain, we're like, oh, I need a category of this, or like, oh, I need to see this evolution. Like, I've been fascinated by like charting evolutions of art forms, and to some extent though, these definitions and stuff, they are important, because it gets kind of boring and tedious, and people are like, art is nothing, art's anything you want it to be. Like sometimes like certain kinds of just vague definitions, at least definitions often need to evolve, but like define it as something is helpful. So
people can visualize it. Even when they hear it. I haven't even noticed too, like people are always asking me like, what kind of music do you make? What are you doing? I'm always just like, okay. Every time I'm just like, I still don't even know what to say. I don't know what my elevator.
Push it onto them. You know?
That's what I do.
Yeah.
I just say, you can just listen and find out for yourself.
I'm not a critic, so.
I'm just like, I like music that I like, and I make music that I like, and it's all over the place. Yeah. I could tell you, I think someone. Yeah, I feel that thing. I was just talking to my uncle earlier today. He was giving me a little piano lesson, and I was trying to explain it. And he's definitely an older boomer. He might be like almost 70 now. I don't even know if that's even boomer. That might even be earlier. But he's just kind of got. I feel like people are locked into certain tribes and labels and stuff, and I think that can happen even in the musical world and the artistic world in general. Be like, I'm a this, or I'm a that, or I'm a, and it I think it's useful, very useful, and I use it, you have to have certain ways to communicate, because otherwise we're just gonna go around and just
like I make noises with instruments, blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. Look at me, I'm making a noise.
You sound like Mario.
Boing. Waha. No, I don't know. I've gone back and forth between labeling myself throughout my life, and I think what's probably the best is to find the most accurate labels, like because there's so many labels that can get co-opted, and like I was gonna say, my uncle, he talks about all these liberals and these Democrats and these Republicans and these conservatives.
People get caught up in the semantics.
And then
the culture around it.
And then they just get triggered over that word, and you're like not even able to talk about the concepts themselves, because and people could say that about music too, like, oh, I make thrash metal or something. People be like, oh, I fucking hate thrash metal. That's
people like, I hate country.
It's like, but our country is a good example.
Like folk country? Do you mean like the kind of arena country that's
thrash
been
metal's
happening?
pretty more. That's more granular. Country is a good example. Or like rap. Everyone always says, oh, I like. So it's like
people when they say they don't like rap, and I was like, all of it, every little bit of rap.
Because a lot of people put hip hop under rap too. So like, I've heard that from people, which I don't think is accurate, but I think hip hop is of the parent of rap. But yeah, you can block yourself off to certain things, and then you get into a certain mindset, and I'm sure I do that with certain things.
Well, and there's even rapping and other kind. Like that's a funny thing, is like the distinctions get totally dissolved because there's tons of bluesier music that there is rapping in.
Oh yeah, it's like, then all of a sudden all spoken word is rap now, and then all of a sudden all and then half of Bob Dylan is rap. Speak singing is rap. Or like apparently that song that Debbie Harry did was one of the first. Debbie Harry?
Yeah, of oh crap, what's she from? Blondie? Is that right?
Oh.
Did I make that shit up? But it was one of the first
you gotta ask yourself.
Songs to like chart top with like rapping in it.
Oh.
And which is like kind of groundbreaking, and it's not that great of a rap, but it is kind of interesting.
She was the first person to
apparently the first like pop song.
Pop song.
I mean, that's what charts.
Because like didn't NWA chart?
I think they charted maybe after, because this was sometime in the 80s.
Oh.
So I think it was like more palatable than in that, because it was sneaky, because it wasn't really like a rap song, but she was rapping
like
in.
R&B.
It's like kind of like Talking Heads kind of rapping, that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, is that rap? Like, what's the stop and end point of that?
Yeah, the one that charts. Yeah, because there's been plenty of that. I'm just trying to, like, I guess, I mean, James Brown kind of had some. Not really though. It wasn't really rapping. He was just kind of like yelling. Like, it was more like a preacher rapping, more like a
there is those like melodic kind of intermissions that would happen in music anyways, and
Because I know, I mean, I'm trying to think of like, no, there's never a Beatles song that, or Elvis that had. But I mean, I was just trying to think. There's got to be definitely 60s songs that did it, but to chart like in the billboards, whatever. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of those Billboard stuff didn't even. Well, I don't even know the history of Billboard, but all I know is I go there every time, and I'm not really that interested in most of the music on it. But that's just me. I don't have my biases in my.
There's some kind of like subversive stuff happening, or like
absolutely.
I mean, I think Lorde really shook up pop music, and then like Billie Eilish just continued that tradition in a really cool way.
Yeah, they can make their own thing when they can sneak it in with this like persona, with this type of art direction. Mm-hmm. It's like somehow like paved the way, so now people can come in and people are still going to make their money from it, but. Yeah. I wonder how, you know.
Then that's going to be kind of co-opted and commodified in kind of a cringe-tacular way.
It's already kind of happened, I feel like. I don't know. You get, because Billie Eilish is like, what, 14? No, she's 16, 18?
I think she's 16.
16.
Maybe she just turned.
She was 14.
You know what? No,
point.
I think she's 17. She just turned 17. She's
17.
still,
right.
You know, a minor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just feel like, I don't know. I always get I'm sure because it sounds like her family's in the business. So
I think one of her parents is an actor, and then her brother writes some of her music.
And this producer.
Yeah, and produces it.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating thing. I feel like people like Billie Eilish, when you have early on, I always get like think about
everyone else's dreams get squashed, but when you're in that environment, your parents like help that shit happen.
Yeah, right. I want to be a musician. It's like, okay, well, your brother's a musician and he knows all the people to make it happen, so why don't you do that?
Yeah.
But the one thing that's interesting, I think about that, like you look at Justin Bieber or something like that, and everyone's always like, Justin Bieber is he's so, you know, he's not balanced. He doesn't have, you know, he's a maniac. He's crazy. Stuff. Like considering.
Got famous at like 14.
Yeah, like considering all that, it seems like he's doing a pretty good job. I don't know what the hell I would do if I was 14 and all of a sudden, literally, like all my peers, all the girls that were my peers were all of a sudden screaming for me and like projecting all these weird emotions and ideas.
And women older than you.
And older, yeah.
Yikes. A lot of that.
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, to be able to handle all that, I'm sure is crazy. Like, because they think Billie Eilish is big, but isn't like Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber got crazy big, right?
I don't know. She's pretty internationally famous for sure. Especially with this most recent album. I don't know how you could compare.
Who's bigger?
Yeah, it's like.
Who's got the better charts?
And she's kind of got a different vibe too.
Definitely. She's not that dancing pop star type thing. She's kind of got that. She
very intentionally does not sexualize what she makes. Although some of it's kind of freaky sexy.
Because she's also 17.
Yeah, that's a choice too, that she doesn't want to be like. But I think there is a sexual element to her song, because if you listen to the lyrics, you're like, whoa, that's sexy.
I've heard that last album I was listening to with my sister when we were on a road trip.
But it's almost like it's not, you know, her being sexy in particular, but I mean,
talking about sexy things.
Talking about sexy things, yeah. That's how that's almost like how I like to approach it. It's like, it should be this like outside of us topic that we should be able to talk about. In a non-invested way.
Let's talk about sexy things.
A lot of people can't like divorce it from like the person saying it.
From the person saying it.
Hell yeah.
And I always wonder, like singing songs on these podcasts, if
you're gonna get hit with that copyright.
Yeah.
That one's.
If I sing it so well.
That one's pretty transformative.
Yeah. Well, I transformed it, so.
Remix.
Remix. Yeah, that's very, very fascinating. So, anyone who's listening or watching who finds you to be an interesting person or already doesn't know who you are, they can follow you on Instagram.
Yeah,
right?
I do. Well, here, I'll just do a quick
YouTube,
blow for blow on what I do on the platforms. So, on YouTube.com, I do kind of motorcycle-related content. I do motorcycle-related content, and a lot of it is moto vlogs, which are these kind of guerrilla-style, strap a GoPro to yourself, go ride and do something kinds of videos. I do some sit-down ones as well, where I just kind of talk about stuff, and I'm probably going to be introducing some different topics going on, but, you know, definitely personality driven, and sometimes I do some reviews and stuff. But it's not too technical. A lot of people who don't ride motorcycles still find them pretty enjoyable. And I use all of Ian's music in them, so they're really fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And then over on Instagram, I do a lot of motorcycle self-portraits. So, it's exactly what you think it is, but it's photographic self-portraits. And I suppose, and then of course I've got Great Lakes Supply Co. I ended up not talking about that at all. But the t-shirt I'm wearing is one of my own designs. I've got this whole cafe racer vibe.
Yeah, Dan complimented on you, not even knowing.
Yeah. Can't tell if you made that up or not.
I know that's your brand.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're like, nice shirt.
I was like, wow, really got him.
But yeah, we've got cafe racer and naked bike inspired things, and cafe racers are like a styling choice, and they're often vintage bikes or vintage inspired bikes, and there's just like a couple of design elements and performance things that factor into them being referred to as cafe racers. And then naked bikes tend to be bikes without fairings, and a lot of those are retro inspired as well. So that's the inspiration for a lot of my designs, and this cafe racer is another one of those.
You're so much better at that than I am.
Yeah, it's the beauty guru. Like, can you see this? Can you see that? Can you see this? Is it focusing?
Trying.
But yeah, so that's GreatLakeSupplyCo.com, and I've got an Instagram account for that as well. But I'm sure if you just follow me on my personal stuff, you'll encounter it.
You got those links in the description already.
And I'm doing a High Voltage show, which is a chopper and vintage motorcycle show on September 7th. So I'll be vending in person with a bunch of my
Here in
merchandise.
Milwaukee,
Yeah, I'll have fanny packs, bum bags.
Oh, I've seen the fanny pack.
Yeah, fanny pack's mad cute.
I'm way behind on my
Just
merch
sold one
game.
the other day.
Nice.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
To a person named Fanny?
No. Cynthia. No. Cindy.
Is there someone who would not be named?
Maybe fully Cynthia. I don't know. Is Cindy short for anything?
Cindy? Cynthia, right?
Okay, cool.
Or Sydney, you're saying?
No.
Sydney?
Cindy.
A fanny pack? Because a person from Sydney for a fanny pack would mean something different, right?
I have sold things to Australia. I don't remember if it was Sydney. Is Sydney in Perth?
42 Wallaby Way?
Yeah. Oh my God. P Sherman 32. Fuck. P Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Something like that. Finding Nemo is such a good movie.
It is.
Anyways, yeah, that covers it for me.
Awesome. Yeah, we got those links. Very interesting. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. I didn't do my radio voice at all.
The whole thing was a radio voice.
Oh, okay. If you're on radio, it's a radio voice.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll be back next week with David Zimmerman, also known as Big Shot Robot. Spay and neuter your pets.